I study at Phoenix, Florida, and I also work at the research lab at FIU. This slide is going to show you, if any of you have any fish in your fish tanks, what invasive fish are in South Florida. First, I'm going to show you some of the familiar species of invasive species that you're probably familiar with. First of which being pythons. As you see in the top left picture, that python is strangling and eating a deer that is almost twice its size. This is a huge problem in the Everglades because this means that they can basically eat anything that's in the Everglades, being invasive to the Everglades. Goldfish, believe it or not, those little fish in your fish tank, are invasive because they eat any plant that's in the bottom of the sea floors, being an impact on a species in that sea. The Nile perch is that huge fish that you see up there. It lives in the Nile River in Africa. The problem is that it was introduced to Lake Victoria in Africa, and it's huge, so it can eat anything that fits into its mouth, causing a huge problem. Crazy ants are aggressive little ants that will devour anything when you're hungry, especially things that are bigger than it, and they take over any body of dead or live animals. Hodzilla. That right here is a picture of my friend. He recently caught that huge hog. These hogs are a problem because of their massive size. They destroy the Everglades wherever they go. The goats is kind of a funny invasive species because goats are very abundant in the Galapagos and they eat all the nutrients in the plants in the Galapagos. Another funny thing is that we're so desperate to get these goats out that people go up in helicopters and actually shoot these innocent goats. Okay, what makes invasive fish a threat? Invasive fish come from other countries, so they're going to be much larger, and they're going to outcompete native fish. They're going to be more aggressive also than the native fish here in Florida. They're going to take over the nests, their habitats, and the food resources of native species here in Florida. As you can see here, this much larger invasive fish is getting to the nest and the food faster and stronger than the native species we have. I'd like to show you a video that my co-worker Vanessa made, where she puts bloodworms into a fish tank, and then you can see that an African jewelfish, which is an invasive species, gets the food resource faster than the native species. Oh wait, let me make this sound. Fast forward a little so we get to the good part. The fish you see here, with the black dots on the side, are the African jewelfish, which are invasive to Florida. You just put in the food right now, and you can see the African jewelfish are the first ones to get to the food. There's also dollar sunfish, which are native species in that tank. And you can see that the African jewelfish are more aggressive, so they got to it first. Some facts about non-natives. In the Everglades, we first discovered that non-natives were a problem about 35 years ago. Another thing is that Florida has a very warm climate all year, which we can tell as it's never cold over here. So invasive species from other countries can adapt to our climate very easily. They can reproduce all year long. It's very difficult to kill these invasive species because, as you can tell, some of them come from Africa or Asia, and they survive their trip all the way to the United States. So they survive the long journey, making them very hard to kill. The main non-native species that I'm going to talk about to you today are the blue tilapia, the Mayan squid, the peacock eel, and the African jewelfish. To the right, you can see their scientific names, which I can't really pronounce. The blue tilapia, it comes from Africa and Eurasia, and it was introduced because the blue tilapia is a big fish, and it's also very tasty when you cook it. It also takes advantage of Florida's warm climate, so it spawns all year round, it reproduces all year round, making its population grow very fast. The blue tilapia eats phytoplankton, zooplankton, and some invertebrates. It's also a big fish, so it's a huge competition for space. As you can see this delicious blue tilapia as it is cooked, you can tell why it's introduced to the United States. The Mayan cichlid, also called the Mexican mojar because it comes from Mexico, was introduced to the United States because aquariums or people or responsible pet owners dumped them into Florida's waters. The Mayan cichlid are known for their aggressive behavior like many other invasive species, so they occupy many habitats. Another threat is that the Mayan cichlid has a high tolerance for salt water, making them huge predators because they can have a wider range and distribution than our native species. The peacock eel. This is a pretty big eel. It can grow up to 30 centimeters. We don't really know much about this eel, but we know that it does come from Southeast Asia. It eats benthic insects, crustaceans, and worms. There's a lot of these eels in our canals, and they're very dangerous. They're native fish, so we're trying to get them out as we speak. The African jewelfish. We have a funny term for you in our lab. We call it a macro predator, because just picture piranhas. They're very similar to piranhas. They're carnivores, so they will come in packs of fish, or schools of fish, and they will destroy anything much larger than it is. The African jewelfish is a huge threat to the dollar sunfish, one of our native species, specifically, because it usually lives in the same areas as the dollar sunfish. It's pretty ugly fish too. These maps are going to show how distributed these specific fish are in Florida and the rest of the United States. Blue tilapia is usually found in Florida, most of Florida, and then most of the Gulf of Mexico and some of Puerto Rico. The Mayan cichlid is found mostly in southern Florida and part of the Gulf of Mexico. And the African jewelfish is found in usually the everglades around half of Florida. All these species are freshwater species. They are also tolerant like the blue tilapia and the Mayan cichlid to some saltwater, but not a lot. The African jewelfish is also found in Puerto Rico. Okay, what can we do to get rid of these nasty fish? Whenever we go to the field in the lab to experiment with fish in the Everglades, usually the park rangers in the Everglades, for example, tell us to, if we ever find an invasive species, to catch them, kill them, but just don't put them back into the water. We use something called electrofishing, where we stick a huge pole into the water and we temporarily shock the fish. We put back and measure the natives, and then the non-natives we either kill or take back to the lab. Another way we can get rid of these invasive species are through the pet trade and also make restrictions on the food that is introduced to the USA. So please kids, if you have any fish that you think are invasive, you can search it up anywhere. Don't be that kid that dumps them into Florida's canals or other environments of water in Florida. Also, try to buy natives, because as you can see here, our glomer sunfish is a lot nicer looking fish than most of the invasive species. I'd like to briefly talk about CAS, which is a group of citizens that work with anglers to collect data about fish throughout Florida. CAS was based on the Rehage Lab, which is the lab where I work at right now, with Jennifer and Ross. They also make decisions on how to preserve water flow in the Everglades and also preserve fisheries in Florida. Here's a short little video about my boss that my boss made, and it's about electrofishing.
Shark River is aptly named for its bull shark inhabitants, but there are many other species of fish, from large tarpon to small mojarra, that find a home here as well. Using a technique called electrofishing, we can catch some bigger fish like snook and Florida gar to trap. The generator creates an electric field that causes fish to swim towards the boat where we can scoop them up in the net. We take vital stats like length and weight.
0.5. 0.632. Can weight.
Then, we can flush their stomachs to see what they eat.
I am removing their stomach contents via gastric lavage. It basically forces water into their stomach and you squeeze it out.
And insert transmitters to track them. We catch and sample as many as we can and keep detailed notes. Now you can investigate the movements of snook and gar by exploring the data.
Does anybody have any questions? No? That's it. Thanks for listening.